After 7 years away from the podium, Fernando Alonso is finally back. With only a few races to go in the 2021 season, Fernando was back on the F1 podium at Qatar after 7 years. Now, for this video, I had to make a video about Fernando, of course, and also had to break out the Renault jacket. When else am I going to kind of put it on in a video? But I kind of wanted to talk about in this video in terms of why has it took 7 years, and it's going to be a bit of a different style video, obviously me talking, so let me know if you kind of like these kind of a little bit off the cuff style videos. I don't have like a script or something. I have a few little notes down here, but nothing kind of crazy. But yeah, just having a conversation basically in terms of why has it took 7 years? Why has Fernando Alonso not been in the right cars and in the right in the right situations to challenge for podiums and wins and, you know, things along that nature? So again, let's just actually go back in terms of this whole 7 years, because the two kind of interesting stats, if you can call them stats, to come out of this is that the two people that he's actually on the podium with in terms of Max Verstappen, who finished in second, and then obviously Lewis, who won the race. Back when Fernando Alonso was last on the podium, which was Hungary 2014. Hungary 2014, that is just crazy. Number one, Max Verstappen was not even in Formula 1. And again, that just seems crazy to me because Max has been in Formula 1 since 2015. That's kind of all I can remember. Max being at Red Bull or Max being at Toro Rosso. So that is just crazy in of itself. But more than anything else is the Lewis side to this, because, and it seems obvious when you kind of say it, but this still stands out to me. The last time Fernando Alonso was on the podium, Lewis Hamilton was a one-time world champion. He had one world championship the last time Fernando was on the podium, and now in 2021 he's battling it out with Max to win a outright record-holding 8th title, and of course Max is battling to win his first. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton, one-time world champion. I just can't stop saying it, but it really does put into perspective in terms of how long it's been. But yeah, that's kind of the basis of this video, and I kind of wanted to talk about in terms of why has it took so long. Now, the first thing to talk about, I suppose, is right where it kind of began in terms of the move to McLaren, because Fernando Alonso, when I started watching F1, and I've mentioned this on multiple occasions on my channel, I have three kind of really big heroes in terms of Formula 1 and the drivers that got me into F1, and that is Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, and Fernando Alonso, because when I started watching, it was those three guys that were battling it out for the championship. It was those three guys that were winning races, and yeah, all of them, you know, both Seb, Lewis, and Fernando, they will always kind of hold a very special place in my heart, and I'll always be a fan of those drivers. But it all kind of went off the rails, obviously, with Fernando in terms of that move to McLaren. Obviously, the second time that he went to McLaren after his, again, disastrous time kind of in 2007 as well, up against Lewis Hamilton when he was a rookie, the whole Spygate scandal, the way the team was managed. And I've kind of talked about this before actually on the channel in terms of that McLaren situation in 2007. There's been so many videos, but yeah, it was a total mess. But going back to the team in 2015, obviously at the beginning of the hybrid era, kind of the big thing that everyone was kind of talking about was in terms of being an engine, being in a team that was a manufacturer team, and McLaren wanted to be that. That's why they partnered again with Honda in 2015, and they thought bring in Fernando Alonso, that McLaren partnership, that McLaren Honda partnership, and it was a total disaster. And you can criticize the move as much as you want. You can say that, you know, it was down to him, maybe it was down to luck, but it was just a bad move. To me, it was just a little bit unlucky. He rolled the dice on McLaren potentially being a great team, and they were at the time. I think we forget that when Fernando actually made the decision to go to McLaren, even in 2014 with the Mercedes power unit, they were still a decent team. They still scored a podium. So it was just a roll of the dice, and it just didn't work out. And I feel like no one saw coming how bad those McLaren Hondas were, and it was a really bad kind of decision for Fernando, and he never really recovered from it. Maybe you can say now coming back to Alpine and getting this podium is kind of on the redemption track, but even then, he's never going to go back to a place, in my opinion, where he's going to challenge for a world championship, even in 2022, but that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But those kind of first few years at McLaren and his entire time at McLaren, actually, and again, I'm talking, when I talk about his time with McLaren Honda and then McLaren Renault, I'm talking about post 2007, so I'm not talking about that season. But there's no doubt that Fernando was given really bad cars relative to his talent level, and even being teammates with Jenson Button. That lineup, just kind of forget the McLaren Honda isolation. Something I've always talked about is Fernando Alonso and Jenson Button. That is one of the greatest driver pairings of all time, and and to see them at the back of the grid, and to kind of know for myself, because I mean, I've been to McLaren in terms of the MTC. It was one of the best experiences in my life. I was so lucky, but I did not see any McLaren Hondas there. Let's just kind of say that. Those cars were not on display on the famous McLaren Boulevard, and I feel like it kind of, you know, it tells you something about their history in terms of they kind of want to forget that part. But to see those two great drivers, and Fernando, who only a few years before was challenging for the World Championship against Seb in what my opinion was his greatest ever season in 2012. I feel like he was probably the best driver overall in 2012, but, you know, Seb obviously deserved the championship, absolutely. But to see a few years later Fernando go from that to then being right at the back of the grid, breaking down almost basically once every in 3 races. I mean, the reliability record was ridiculous, and obviously there was this whole kind of a massive miscommunication between Honda and McLaren. That relationship just did not work. They kind of basically, McLaren thought that they were just going to link up with Honda yet again, and we're going to bring back the Ayrton Senna years. We're going to bring back that success. We are now a manufactured team. We're in charge of our own power unit, and clearly there was some kind of cultural kind of difference, the massive communication error as well, and the leadership just was not strong enough. And I feel like Fernando Alonso, he did all he could in those cars, but then he started to snap. And this is kind of the bad side of Fernando Alonso, and something I've always talked about in terms of, and again, I always compare kind of Lewis and Seb and Fernando, kind of, you know, all three of them together. They're all great drivers, but they all have their kind of negatives. They're not perfect people, and they're not perfect drivers. You know, Lewis, sometimes you can kind of, even we've seen this season, sometimes he needs his back against the wall. Sometimes he needs to feel like the world is against him to really get the best out of him and kind of perform under pressure, which he does. But again, sometimes he needs that kind of almost negativity towards him to kind of fight back, which isn't always great. Sebastian Vettel, I mean, we've seen Seb sometimes just have these kind of breaks in the car, like something just doesn't, you know, something goes wrong up here in terms of mentally for Seb in the car, like crashing into Lewis on purpose in Baku, having that crazy radio tirade I remember in Mexico 2016 where he was just dropping F-bombs and losing his cool towards Charlie Whiting, multi-21 as well. And when it comes to Fernando, his kind of weakness is the fact that he can be too vocal sometimes. He can kind of, he's a driver that drives with emotion, there's no doubt about it, and he's got kind of this Marmite character where people either love him or they hate him. But sometimes that kind of emotional side to him, it can kind of spill over, and it can kind of be overpowering, because he almost became a joke really towards the end of his career with McLaren in terms of like the McLaren Honda memes, you know, the whole deck chair, the whole him on the camera in Brazil. I think there was even a video of him like doing keepy uppies at one point when his car broke down, of course. When his McLaren Honda broke down, he was doing like keepy uppies with a random rock or something. So he literally became a meme at that point, and I feel like, yeah, I mean, for anyone that watched F1 back then, I know we have a lot of newer fans, but that whole McLaren Honda meme, like that kind of 3 or 4 year period was just ridiculous. There were like some crazy things being said, and I remember one time David Coulthard on the broadcast when watching the race, he was like, I think he said a joke that basically, no, your footage is not slowed down. This is just how fast the McLaren Honda is. Like, he actually said that kind of towards the team. So it just shows you how much of a joke the team was at that point, and it was really sad to see, because as a big McLaren fan, that was not great to see. Two great drivers with Jensen and Fernando. And to see the team where it was really hard. But Fernando never recovered from that, because even when we got to 2017, for example, Jensen left, Stoffel Van Dorn came in, the team basically kept talking up every single year about how much better they're going to be, how much their chassis is amazing, and it never came together with Honda, because in 2017, that massive rule change, again, a chance to reset and perhaps kind of get a bit of ground back in Formula One. Again, it just went completely, it was a complete disaster, because the lack of communication, the friction between McLaren and Honda, the car was just not right, because basically Honda tried to push the envelope in terms of reliability and packaging, and McLaren just tried to push it even more in terms of kind of confining the Honda power unit to even tighter restrictions. And basically the problem was that the engine was overheating. It was not designed well enough for the package. Again, miscommunication between McLaren and Honda, and in 2017 their reliability was even worse. I mean, maybe a bit better than 2015, but if you look at, and I might put up on the screen actually, if you look at the reliability record of Fernando Alonso in terms of race finishes at McLaren in that 4-year period, it is just an absolute joke. So yeah, and he kind of kind of lost it after that, because by the time we got to 2018 and Honda had left and McLaren kind of thought, you know, we have a great chassis, let's put the Renault engine in there because Red Bull are winning races with Renault, so we can finally do the same. They were found out. The team did not do a good enough job, and we found out subsequently in the year since that they basically had some correlation issues. The wind tunnel just wasn't quite working out. The numbers that they were seeing was not quite right, but I think what was quite telling at the time was that Fernando Alonso was not making the situation any better, because he was also talking up the team and trying to encourage the troops around him, but it has kind of a double-edged sword in terms of really giving the team a kick up the backside like he was doing in the media with some of the things that he said. And is that always the right approach? Yes and no. I mean, similar to football, sometimes you need that kind of, again, kick up the backside to be a little bit more vocal, to kind of really get and rally the troops to kind of realize that something is going wrong. But sometimes you need to keep it low. You know, you don't need to just have it out in the media, and you need more of the arm around the shoulder approach, which is, I think that's where Fernando Alonso got the balance wrong on more than one occasion. But again, what I've always defended him is that those cars were so bad to the point where, and he's watching Lewis and Seb challenge for titles, and he knew, he believed inside himself in 2017 and 2018 that if he was in the Mercedes or if he was in the Ferrari, he would be challenging for the title and pushing both Lewis and Seb all the way. And so I feel like for him, especially by the time we got to 2018 and McLaren were found out yet again, another terrible car. I mean, it was kind of okay in the first third of the season, and then it just dropped off completely after, I think it was about Spain or something, and they were the second worst team on the grid, only ahead of Williams. And by then, Fernando Alonso had just lost kind of love with Formula One. He was frustrated. He saw what his contemporaries were doing at the top of the grid fighting for titles. And at that point, he had kind of had enough and retired from Formula One. And to me, it was kind of sad to see him go because, you know, when you see even drivers like Kimi Raikkonen in 2018 winning races and challenging for podiums, and you think about the fact that Fernando Alonso was maybe getting a P7 on a good day, it just wasn't right, and it was quite sad to see him go. And I feel like he needed those 2 years out, and he always kind of opened that gap to returning to Formula One, but we never, you know, I did not think it was going to happen. And when it did, again, there was that kind of backlash in terms of why are Renault not taking some of their junior drivers. There was something behind that. I remember talking last year, mentioning that they didn't actually have an option. When Fernando Alonso came in and said that he wants to return for 2021, their junior drivers did not have the super license points to be in Formula One in 2021. So they were kind of backed into a corner, and there was a lot of, and arguably rightly so actually, there was a lot of hesitation from a lot of the fans. There was a lot of negativity about Fernando coming back. I was always positive because I did not feel, as a Fernando fan and as someone again who grew up and watched him race with Lewis and Seb and seeing the success that they've gone on to have, the way he left F1 in 2018 was not right, and he did not have the car to do it justice. Of course, as I mentioned, he definitely hurt his chances. He was too vocal. Sometimes he wears his heart on his sleeve just a little bit too much, and he still does, by the way. He's very similar, but actually to Alain Prost. They're both kind of, it's not, you know, you want to see drivers being truthful. You want to see drivers wear their heart on their sleeve and kind of tell you the truth and be emotional. But sometimes in Formula One, it's better to be quiet, even if you're saying and speaking the truth, because it can hurt your kind of relationship with teams and it can hurt your overall image, which it definitely did with Fernando Alonso. I mean, his relationship with Honda, especially after McLaren and Honda separated, I think Honda didn't even want to have him as one of their IndyCar drivers for the Indy 500. So he hurt his relationships outside of Formula One through some of the things that he has said and done. And even when I've talked to people, like real people that actually worked with him, the strange thing is there's always been mixed messages for me, because some people talk about how amazing he is to work with, how he's a fighter, how, especially a lot of people in McLaren, how he always got the best out of the car, and that they were just almost overawed by how good he was in some of their cars. But then when you also talk to some people at Ferrari and some people that kind of, and read some of the articles, I mean, again, they talk about the fact that he was a little bit hard to work with because his standards were just so high, and sometimes it is just a little bit too much. But again, when you don't deliver a world-class driver like Fernando Alonso a good enough car, it's just part of his makeup, it's part of his character. Like I said, in the same way that Lewis and Seb have flaws, Fernando also have flaws, and he's sometimes a little bit too vocal and just a little bit too emotional, especially in the media. When it comes to someone like Seb, he is so much better at just controlling his emotions in terms of, you know, again, I said that he does have kind of his moments, but he doesn't really throw his team under the bus. He's not too kind of critical of his team or in the media or on the team radio. I mean, I know there was a little bit of that with Matteo Binotto in 2020, but overall, Seb is so much better at protecting the team, you know, compared to Fernando. So again, going into this season, there was a lot of anticipation. There was a lot of negativity about Fernando coming back because, I mean, he was going to turn 40 years old. And when you look at some of the other drivers that perhaps missed out on the seat, you know, why would Alpine want to bring back this older driver? There was a lot of that going on. You know, he's too old, he's washed up, and things of that nature. But I think he's proven a lot of people wrong. I think Esteban Ocon is kind of back to his best, in my opinion. I think he didn't start off 2020, if you remember, when he came back after his sabbatical. He didn't start off that year too strong. But I feel like now he is right up to his best, and it was great to see him get the win. But Fernando Alonso, I mean, he's back. He's absolutely back. He's as good as I've ever seen him. His consistency has been ridiculous. Don't get me wrong, the first 5 races were not great, but I think we forget, again, 2 years out of the sport, you can kind of give him that kind of, you know, a rough start in the first 5 races. And of course, in February, he had that crash, I remember, and he had surgery on his jaw as well. So yeah, coming in, he had to race a month later. So I understand why the first 5 or 6 races were a little bit rough, but since Azerbaijan, the guy has been unbelievable in terms of consistency. Fernando is back to his best. Sometimes he missed out on that little pieces of luck to get a podium, because when we talk about Gasly, Seb, Esteban Ocon getting podiums in midfield cars, you do need that bit of luck. You need some of the leaders to have a bad race or be crashed out. And I think Fernando in Russia had a really good chance of a podium, but then the rain came and they didn't quite pit him at the right time. So he was never quite in those positions at the right time to get that podium. But again, he has shown his class in 2021. He has shown that he is still at the top of his game. And finally in Qatar, it was kind of the weekend where everything came together. Brilliant qualifying in 5th place. Then obviously moving up the grid up to 3rd after penalties for both Valtteri Bottas and Max Verstappen. And then critically at the start, Fernando Alonso, something he's known for, did one of his kind of amazing Alonso starts and got up into P2. And that was key, because if Pierre Gasly had stayed ahead of Fernando after the first lap, it might have been a bit tricky actually, and in the end he only got the podium by 3 seconds over Sergio Perez. So everything from the qualifying to the pace he had to the start, it was a brilliant race for him, and he thoroughly deserved that podium. Yes, with a bit of luck, but again, every single midfield driver needs a bit of luck to be on the podium. And finally, he breaks what was a really kind of long streak. And I think he actually had the record, which is not a record that you want to have, in terms of it was either the most amount of races or the longest time between 2 podiums. And that is not a record that you want to have. But yeah, on his comeback season, he has been the team leader. He is, I think he's thoroughly basically outperformed Esteban Ocon. It's been closer in qualifying, there's no doubt about it, and Esteban Ocon has done a great job, but he has been the team leader. He has been the #1 driver. He has been unbelievably consistent. I think he's only not scored points on like 6 races, which is just insane, and it was a thoroughly deserved podium, and it is good to see him back after, yes, a lot of negativity, a lot of pain after those McLaren Honda and McLaren Renault years. But yeah, for me personally, as someone who, again, grew up watching Fernando and do some amazing things in those Ferraris, especially in 2012, it was amazing to see him back on the F1 podium. So yes, that is kind of the dichotomy of Fernando Alonso. He's a driver that just frustrates me because on a talent level, he is top 10 all time in my opinion. He is so amazing. Some of the stuff that he can do in the car is just incredible, especially on a Sunday, but he has this edge to him. He has this character and he has this mouth that sometimes just, it hurts him. He can't stop talking, and it even frustrates me as an Alonso fan, because sometimes you do need to have that almost boring PR head on to just say the boring thing. Don't give the media any more ammunition. And I mean, Fernando Alonso, even this year, if you ever want to be a journalist in Formula 1, and if you ever need headlines for your website or blog, then just walk up to Fernando Alonso and ask him anything about Lewis Hamilton, because there's also a little bit of jealousy, I think, and resentment from Fernando there, because, and I feel like, you know, everyone's jealous of Lewis Hamilton because of the car that he's been given and because of how good he is, but I think Fernando sometimes is a bit too vocal and wears his heart a little bit too much on his sleeve, and that is something that has frustrated me even this season, because again, it's not that what he's saying isn't true, or maybe, you know, you can talk about whether it's true or not, but he's definitely always authentic. He's always been truthful to himself, and he's always kind of said it how it is. But just because something is true, it doesn't mean that it needs to be said. So, but again, with Fernando, and I say it all the time, you get the rough with the smooth. Yes, his character can sometimes be a little bit polarizing, no doubt about it. Even I get frustrated by it. But his driving, man, I mean, he is special. I mean, the guy is special. Give him anything. Give him a shopping trolley, and he will find a way to get the maximum out of it. And of course, one of the biggest reasons why he returned in 2021 is because of a potential chance to maybe get more podiums and wins, and maybe a championship in the brand new rule changes for 2022. Now, as far as that, obviously I've made a video, I think a few months ago, in terms of could Fernando Alonso still win the Formula 1 World Championship? Well, I mean, first of all, it's a massive long shot, and in my opinion, the answer to that is no, because as good as he has been on his return, I feel like the only way, in my opinion, that Fernando Alonso is ever going to win another world championship is if, and this is not going to happen by the way, but it's if Alpine end up in a Mercedes 2014 situation where it's literally only Esteban Ocon and only Fernando Alonso fighting for a world championship, because in that scenario, Fernando Alonso only up against Esteban Ocon, he is gonna absolutely use every last ounce of his talent and every last ounce of his kind of natural ability, and he is gonna dominate Ocon in that world championship fight. I don't think that's gonna happen, because the likes of Ferrari are stronger, the likes of McLaren are stronger, and I just don't see Alpine having this massive jump to the point where they're like Mercedes 2014 level of dominance. So that's why I don't think that he's going to be a world champion next year. And even if he did have a car that was kind of on the level of, say, even this year, even if he was in a Red Bull or Mercedes, I still think, and I would still back Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen over Fernando Alonso for a world championship, because I think the thing that separates all three of them is that I feel like Max and Lewis have just a little bit more qualifying pace, that little bit more raw pace. And even as amazing as Fernando is on the Sunday, and I'm sure he's going to be even better in 2022 when he's going to be fully motivated, the brand new cars, as good as he is, I don't think he has that last few tenths of qualifying pace to really kind of edge out the likes of Max and Lewis, because if you start behind Max and Lewis in a race, very, very rarely are you going to finish ahead of them. It is just that tight, and the talent up at the top is just that good. But either way, I think 2022, I mean, that's a conversation for another day, and we're going to see where he's going to be next year. We're going to see how good the Alpine team is, but overall, it has still been amazing to see Fernando back on the podium for me. Luckily, he's not going to finish his career with a podium that was back in 2014 in that horrible Ferrari as well, the F14T, but that's a story for another day as well. It is great to see Fernando Alonso back on the F1 podium. It is unfortunate that it's been 7 years. Yes, he has been in unlucky situations in bad cars, but at the same time, as I said, he hasn't exactly made them any better either. Anyway, there you go. That is kind of this video talking about Fernando Alonso finally back on the F1 podium. He's always a fun driver to talk about because he is so polarizing. He has so many kind of facets of his character, both good and bad, both on and off the track, and he's just an interesting character to talk about. And yeah, again, an F1 legend, and thank goodness that it's, you know, that he at least he's finished on the podium before he's going to end his F1 career, probably in 2022 or maybe 2023. And hopefully, I mean, if it takes another 7 years for him to, I mean, if he scores a podium in 7 years' time at the age of 47, I mean, that would definitely be something to watch, and I can't wait to watch that race. But anyway, there you go. Let me know your thoughts about seeing Fernando Alonso back on the F1 podium and it taking 7 years for it to kind of happen again. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments box below. Thank you for watching this video. It's something, again, a little bit different to my usual content. So yeah, let me know if you enjoyed it. Again, let me know all of your thoughts in the comments box below. I hope you did enjoy this video, and if you did, then don't forget to drop a like and smash that subscribe button as well. We just passed 113,000 subscribers, so thank you so much to every single last one of you. And again, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one.